Uh, so कल क्या कहता first thing moles ठीक है we just did a basic but लिख भी देते हैं कि moles अच्छा now क्या किया था the first thing that we did was कि what a mole was right so I told you that moles is just a number for counting atoms ठीक है it's a unit for counting atoms वो हमने किया था और we discussed कि you've got small numbers they have different units ठीक है you've got slightly bigger numbers they've got slightly different units ठीक है you've got very big numbers and they've got different even bigger units ठीक है so every unit it just makes communication easier ठीक है so we always use but instead of saying the whole number time बच जाता है it's instead of saying this entire number we just have to say 2 and billion ठीक है so it just saves time so now a mole is like a very big number so it's way bigger this is what a billion looks like and this is what a mole looks like it's a huge number and the reason it's a huge number is because there's so many atoms that you a billion is not going to be sufficient it's going to be a very small unit you can't really count atoms in billions because billion is a very small number when you're counting atoms ठीक है? Atoms are so many that a small sample of any substance has more than this number of atoms, right? So that is what what one mole is. Okay, that's 6.02 times 10 power 23. So so mole is simply okay, if somebody is going to ask you for a definition of what a mole is, what is it? It's the number of particles that's equal to this number, which is 6.02 times 10 power 23. Now, how to convert any number into a unit? So we need to convert numbers into moles. So 36 can be converted into dozen. How? By dividing it by the unit itself. 600 chairs could be, I mean, 600 could be converted into 600 by what? Dividing it by the unit, right? This number could be converted. So if you want to convert a number into its unit, you divide it by the unit itself. So if I have a number and I want to convert it into moles, I'm going to divide it by what a mole is. So we did that conversion. If I have 10 into 10 per 21 molecules of CO2, so I just divide by the Avogadro's number and I'll get the moles, which is 0.0166 moles. If I have 6 into 10 raised to power 24 atoms of sodium, I'm going to divide it by this number and it will convert into moles. If I have 4 times 10 power 18 molecules of O2, I'm going to divide it by 6.02 times 10 power 23 and I'm going to get the moles. If I want to go back, okay, we did that. So if you want to go back from the unit to the number, कहाँ पे गए? So if I have 3 dozens, I want to convert it back into the number itself. I will multiply it by what the unit is. Okay, if I have 600 and I want to convert it back into the number, I'm going to multiply it by what? Multiplied by the unit itself. So if I have moles and I want to convert it back into the number, I'm going to take that moles and multiply it by the Avogadro's constant or what a mole is. Okay. So is this clear? This is what we did last time. Is this thing clear?
Yes,
Meera,
sir.
ठीक है. अच्छा, so remember, all counting would be done in moles. All the counting that you're going to do, it's all going to be done in moles. ठीक है? No one uses the actual number. Everyone uses moles or billions or trillions or hundreds or dozens. ठीक है? No one communication में no one actually uses the actual number. I said now, anyways, there are 4 or 5 different formulas which you need to be aware of, which are related to moles. The formulas are pretty straightforward. The first one, ठीक है, formula number 1. That is Moles is equal to mass divided by the molar mass, which is AR or MR. So that's our first formula. That's moles is equal to mass divided by molar mass. And this is known as the molar mass, which is the mass of 1 mole of a substance. Which is basically your AR or MR that is given in the periodic table expressed in grams. Yeah, that's what molar mass is. AR or MR expressed in grams. So I'm going to explain what molar mass is. It's the mass of 1 mole of a substance. So if I have 1 mole of sodium atoms, the molar mass is written in the periodic table. If you open the periodic table, the bigger number that's written, that's the molar mass, okay, which is also known as the relative atomic mass. So I know that if I have 1 mole of atoms, which I know is how many atoms? That's 6.02 times 10 power 23 atoms. The mass of 1 mole of these atoms is going to be 23 grams. Okay. So for example, so every substance has a different mass, and that mass has been calculated. It's given in the periodic table. Okay. For example, 1 dozen eggs, they will have a certain mass. 1 dozen bananas, that's going to have a different mass, right? So similarly, 1 mole of sodium atoms are going to have this mass. 1 mole of some other substance, for example, 1 mole of Cl2 molecules, that's going to have a different mass. Cl ki jo mass in a periodic table, that's 35.5. But since there are two of them in the molecule, so that's going to be 71 grams. So if you have a molecule, you'll have to add up all the atomic masses that are given in the periodic table. And similarly, if I have 1 mole of let's pick some other substance. If I have 1 mole of copper sulfate, now copper sulfate are blue crystals, and they're going to have a different mass. So copper is, I think that's 63.5 in the periodic table. Sulfur is 32.1, and oxygen is 16. And times 4 because there are four oxygens, right?
The copper is 64.
64 है. So आप बताओ कि इसका what's the total? अच्छा sorry 32.1 भी नहीं है 32 है. मैं A levels का. अच्छा so it's 64 plus 32 plus 16 times 4. How much do we get?
160.
Okay, so the mass is going to be 160 grams. So basically, you have 1 mole of particles of any substance, you will know what the mass is. 1 mole of sodium oxide, that's going to have a mass of sodium कितना होता है? That's 23 times 2 plus oxygen is 16 in the periodic table. So how much is that? That's 46 plus 16. I think that's going to be 62 grams, right? So you've got 1 mole of CO2. So what is that going to be? That's going to be carbon is 12 in the periodic table, and this is 16 times 2, and you add all of that up, and that's going to give you 44 grams. So 1 mole of any substance, they're not always going to have the same mass. Okay, well, exactly the example of 1 dozen eggs, 1 dozen bananas, they're going to have different masses. Uh, 1 dozen apples, they're going to have a different mass. So some substances are heavy, some substances are light. So they all have different masses, but those masses can be calculated using the periodic table. Okay. I'm just going to do a few more exercises, which is that sometimes you'll have salts with water of crystallization. So, for example, you've got calcium chloride dot 2H2O. So that's a salt that has water of crystallization in it. So calcium is what, 40? Chlorine is 35.5, and that's times 2. Uh, Now water, you have to add water. Water is H
So
is
what is the water called?
water of crystallization. जो salts होती है ना, like any salt, a lot of salts have water of crystallization in them. तो कहते हैं there's a name given to it, and that's called hydrated salts. The other salts without water in them in the crystal, that they are called anhydrous salts. I say anyway, so some salts are going to have water of crystallization in them. So when you're calculating the molar mass, you're going to add that as well. So calcium is 40, Cl is 35.5 times 2, water is 18, and it's going to be twice. So you have to add it twice because there are two water molecules. इसकी क्या आ रही है value? What's the molar mass for this? मैंने किया calculate? Yeah, but the bath, the beta. What's the
179.
ये कितना है 179 grams. ठीक है. So anyway, so this is known as the molar mass. So coming back to the formula. So we know the mass of 1 mole of any substance. I said now what the formula is, if you know the mass of 1 mole of, let's say, neon atoms, right? 20 hota hai, theek hai? So that's 20 grams, right? Then if I double the number of atoms, so if I have 2 moles of neon atoms, so the mass of 2 moles of neon atoms, it's pretty obvious it's going to be 40 grams. Okay. If I have 10 moles of neon atoms, so 1 mole has a mass of 20 grams. If I have 10 moles, then you have 10 times the quantity, it's going to be 200 grams, right? ये clear है कि, so it's simple ratios. Because the periodic table told me maybe 1 mole of neon atoms has this mass. So I would know what 2 moles will have and 10 moles will have. Okay, is this clear?
Yes.
जी.
So the formula is basically this. What is the formula? It's moles is mass divided by molar mass, right? So the ratio that we just implemented above, it is that if you know what the mass is, right? The mass is 200 grams. So if you know what the mass is, and if you know what the molar mass is, get that 20, right? So you would know the moles, which is what, 10 moles. Here's the formula gives you exactly this. Similarly, if you know the moles, For example, you know that you have two moles of something. You don't know what the mass is, but you know the molar mass of the substance, which is in the case of above neon, that's 20. Then manipulating this, you will get mass is equal to 40 grams, right? Which is exactly what you're getting. Okay. So, so the ratio, the simple ratio that we did above, that is exactly what the formula is. Moles is mass divided by molar mass. You know 200 mass. This is the molar mass, 20. You get the moles. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay. So for example, if I have sodium molar mass is 23 grams. 1 mole of sodium has a mass of 23 grams. So if I have 46 grams, then it's pretty obvious I have 2 moles, right? If I have 46 grams, then it's kind of obvious I have 2 moles. So moles would be mass, which is, let's say I have 46 grams. The molar mass is 23, so it's 23. So I'm going to get 2 moles, right? So formula, simple is a formula, and you figure out the moles. Now the important thing is you should remember or memorize this formula. कितने formula? ये वाला, the first formula. Because formulas are a lot simpler than doing ratios. Okay, ratios take a lot of time. Ratios are time consuming. Somebody says give me 50 moles of sodium, right? What you're gonna do is give me 1 mole has a mass of 23 grams, so 50 moles will have a mass of what? It's going to be X. Then you're going to do crisscross, and then you'll try and figure this out, right? The formulas are quicker and easier, and they're much faster. Okay, so 50 moles, पता है 50 moles, okay, and you want to figure out what the mass is. You know what the molar mass of sodium is? That's 23. So all you have to do is you just have to multiply 23 by 50, and you'll get your answer. Okay, so formulas are a lot quicker compared to just ratios. So anyways, that's your first formula, and we're going to try and use that formula to do a couple of questions. Okay, so we're going to find moles. So we're going to find moles. So let's say I've got 40 grams of calcium oxide. So find the moles, right? So what I'm going to do is the formula is as a moles के लिए there's a symbol that's often used, and that's N. So moles is what? It's mass divided by molar mass, right? So mass is 40 grams. We need to figure out what the molar mass is. So calcium is 40 and oxygen is 16. So the molar mass would come out to be, well, 40 plus 16, it's going to come out to be equal to 56. So what do we get? कितनी value आ रही है?
0.7143.
So it's coming out to be 0.741. कितना?
128 है, but
Plus one, ना,
seven नहीं,
374.
71428.
71428, right? तो बस ये आपके मोल्स आ गए, ठीक है? 714 मोल्स, ठीक है? That's your moles. Uh, अच्छा, similarly, so एक और कर लेते हैं. Let's say I have 15 grams of aluminium sulfate. So how many moles is this? ठीक है? So moles would be mass divided by, so 15 grams divided by, अब aluminium is 27, sulfur is 32, and oxygen is 16. So you have to calculate the MR carefully. It's 27 times 2. कितने sulfur? I think there are 2 sulfur, so that's 32 times 2. And 32 times 3. Because 32 times 3 because there are 3 sulfurs. Plus 6. Oxygen is 12, right? 16 times 12. Is this clear? Okay, what are the moles that we're getting? And what's the MR? Now you have to be very careful with the MR in this case. Yeah, yeah. MR, what's the MR? 0.04, ठीक है. 0.0439 moles, ठीक है. So the trouble is that you have to be very careful with the MR because if you got the MR wrong, the whole question would be incorrect. Let's do another one. Let's see, we've got ज़्यादा कर लेते हैं. Let's say I've got 500 grams of lithium hydride. So how many lithium? पता नहीं कितना lithium. I think is 7. Lithium I think is 7. So this is 7 and this is 1. So it's going to be mass divided by molar mass, which is going to be 500 divided by 8. What do we get? $62.5 moles. So okay, so that's moles as mass divided by molar mass. And the reverse is also true that you can figure out the mass if you're given moles. Doing that is also easy. If you're given moles, you can find mass. So if I have 0.015 moles of calcium, which has an MR of 40. So we know that to A part, okay? So you know K moles is mass divided by molar mass. Or in this case, the molar mass would be AR. So mass would be moles multiplied by the AR. If you rearrange the terms, that's what your mass is going to be. And your mass would come out to be, now you have 0.015 moles multiplied by the molar mass, which is 40 in this case. And if you do the math, what do we get? क्या value आ रही है in this case?
Zero
ml
point six
कितना 0.6
six.
grams. ठीक है, so let's do one more. Okay, I've got 1.5 moles of aluminium oxide. So again, moles is what? Mass divided by molar mass. Let's say in this case it's going to be MR. And rearranging that's going to be moles multiplied by the molar mass. So 1.5 multiplied by aluminium is 27 and oxygen is 16. So it's 27 times 2 plus 16 times 3. Okay, remember, be very careful with the formula. So what do we get? कितना है किसी का है? 1 सेकेंड. अच्छा, 153. हाँ ठीक है, looks good. अच्छा, 153 grams. ठीक है, so it's a simple formula, moles as mass divided by molar mass. So keep that in mind. Now moving to the third formula, which is, I said mainly now there are four formulas. The other ones are, I mean, they're more than that, but the main formulas, there are four of them. Now we're going to talk about solutions and moles, and sometimes gases as well. Now, when we talk about solutions, and when we discuss solutions, all your solutions have, as a solutions is when you have, normally it's water, and there are some particles that are mixed inside that water, right? So you've got all sorts of solutions. You've got dilute solutions, and you've got very concentrated solutions. Okay, so all solutions are described by, okay, if you see a cup of tea, right? There could be a lot of sugar in it. There could be very less sugar in it, or there could be no sugar at all, right? So you can't really tell what is the amount of particles that are present unless somebody tells you what the concentration is. You can't tell the number of particles by looking at the volume or by the quantity of the solution. You can only tell the number of particles. You can only get the idea of how many particles you have if concentration is described. So this one is very concentrated, and the other one, the other solution that you have is very dilute or less concentrated. So how do you describe the term concentration? So concentration is what? It's the number of particles in a particular volume. And your number of particles are always counted in moles. Okay, the counting in of atoms is done in moles. Divide by the volume. So it's the number of particles in a particular volume. You got a higher number of particles in a particular volume, then that would mean that it's very concentrated. If you've got a lower number of particles, then that would mean it's not very concentrated. Volume is always going to be in, it's always going to be in decimeter cube. Okay, the volume is always going to be in decimeter cube. And a decimeter cube is like a cm cube or a meter cube. You should know what the conversion is. If somebody describes something in cm cube, that thing could be
Can you
converted.
please repeat definition for concentration?
Concentration, yeah, it's the number of particles per unit volume, right? The amount of particles in a particular volume. You get number of particles per unit volume. लिख देता हूँ. ठीक है? Is this clear?
Yes.
Please.
अच्छा, ये conversion भी पता नहीं चाहिए. If you have cm cube, how do you convert to dm cube? You divide by 1000. ठीक है? You divide by, and how do you go back? You multiply by 1000. ये उसी तरह से grams to kilograms and kilograms back to grams. So cm cube to dm cube and dm cube back to cm cube. You should know how that conversion is done. I said, now to simplify this, concentration is what? Concentration is moles. ठीक है? Remember the symbol for moles, I'm going to use N over volume. ठीक है? So this is N is moles, and the volume is going to be in decimeter cube. And that's what concentration is. All solutions are going to be described by concentration because otherwise, without concentration, you have no idea how many particles are present in a particular solution. So, for example, there's a solution, and so Inkina, tell me what the concentration is. As the concentration has a unit as well, which is moles over volume, and so it's the unit is mole per dm cube. So, anyways, so I'm going to take a solution, and in that solution, let's say that solution is उसका नाम दे देते हैं, ठीक है? So I've got so question number 1. Calculate the concentration, right? Now, for example, I've got 1.8 moles of NaCl mixed in 1500 cm cube water. So I need to know what the concentration is. So how do I calculate concentration? Concentration is moles over volume, right? So it's 1.8 moles divided by the volume. The volume must be in dm cube. So how do you convert cm cube to dm cube divided by 1000? Okay, so it's going to be 1.5. So Mr. What is the value that we are getting? Yeah, what's 1.8 divided by 1.5? ये आवाज कट गई है.
1.2.
अच्छा, 1.2 mole per dm cube, right? So that's 1.2 mole per decimeter cube. So similarly, we can have another one which is there is 0.5 moles of HCl mixed in 200 cm cube solution. I said no one is going to tell you the volume. No one is going to write volume. Take it. 200 cm cube means it's the volume of the solution. So concentration is what? Concentration is moles divided by volume. It should be in decimeter cube. So it's going to be 0.5 moles divided by what is 200 cm cube in dm cube? That's going to be divided by 1000. That's going to be 0.2 dm cube. So you can 5 divided by 2. That's 1.5 mole per decimeter cube. Okay, so this second solution is more concentrated. It's got a concentration of 1.5. The previous one had a concentration of 1.2 only. Okay, is this clear?
Yes.
So that is concentration. Okay, remember this is your second formula. All solutions are going to be described by concentration. What is concentration? It's the number of particles divided per unit volume. Okay, it's moles divided by volume, and the unit for that is mole per dm cube. But moles per dm cube. Okay. So we did Three formulas so far. There was moles divided by mass over AR or MR. Is mass over molar mass. We had the first formula, which was the conversion, that if you want to convert any number into moles, what do? You divide the number by the Avogadro's constant. Okay. And so now we're going to jump to the last formula. Not the last, but the four major formulas. ठीक है, the fourth one. तो उसका time तो नहीं है, but that's for gases. That's moles and we'll try and figure out, or we'll try and do that one in the next class. ठीक है. So we fill out, we're just doing the basics. ठीक है. We're just trying to understand that there are 3-4 formulas which we're going to use. Everything is going to be described in moles. और ये पे कल कंटिन्यू करते हैं. ठीक है. चलिए, okay everyone.
Uh,
Love, sir.
Love, sir.